Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? There were way too many flies for an empty house. Schizophrenia is a bitch, and I don't usually curse when I'm writing. I like the classic style of Stephen Crane and the refined worlds of Oscar Wilde, and I know things have changed a lot since this kind of gentleman went extinct. But still, there is something about correct writing that turns everything into poetry. Even these stories. I continue now. Schizophrenia is a bitch. Medicated or unmedicated. Dealing with not knowing what is real or not can still be challenging day by day. From the happy little bunnies hopping out of an unexistent hole to say hi graciously and brighten your day, to the four-eyed woman whose face was falling rotten into pieces in front of my astonished eyes, while she only wanted to offer my breakfast one autumn morning. Anything can be frightening. I thought I was never going to have the courage to move far from the city, far from the hospitals, from the gentrification, and the everyday influx of strangers. It made me calm to know I could just pop out a card from my pocket that shows my mental condition, and people would help me in the most scary situations. Reality pushed me outside of the city. I found the best house to which I could move. Affordable, 2 stories, old cracking wooden floors, unfinished basement, and a big yard with space to grow your vegetables, your very own lavender plants, with the freedom to sit outside and write while listening to nothing but the chickadees and robins singing. No neighbors, no annoying neighbors, because as much as I liked the activity of the city, living in a 24 floors building could be a tiny bit too noisy sometimes. A 100-year-old house that needed some love. Honestly, for the price I paid, I had all the love in the world to give. I didn't overthink before buying it. I didn't want to get into details, so I put the signature on the paper and bought it as it was. The first night was a nightmare. The mice activity was so high in the basements and between the walls that it looked like they were throwing me a welcoming party. My eyes were wide open, and I kept just thinking, I need a cat. I need a cat. I need to get a cat. I didn't challenge my judgment or how factual the existence of mice in a house this old would be. I could smell the mice their nests, their filth, their spawns. And if there is something I rarely get in life, it's olfactory illumination, also called phantom smells. I didn't dare tell any of my family members about the nightmare because I had been told many, many times that moving out of the city was not for everyone. I didn't want to worry my mom. She tried to persuade me to move in with her, inviting me to stay more than once, offering me homemade food, and promising me peace and clean laundry. I spent the night the best I could, turning from one side to the other, trying to get comfortable and used to every noise. I woke up the morning after with a horrible headache when I moved the curtains in the bedroom to let the sunlight in. I saw at least 30 flies, scattered, sunbathing, flapping their wings against one of the windows, and I jumped back to my bed in disgust. I had my phone fully charged and used one of my favorite methods to discover if my mind was playing games or not. I took a picture of the flies. You see, when you have schizophrenia, if you take a picture or make a video at the precise moment that you see the craziest things, you can actually check on your phone if what you are seeing is real. The mind evolved to be tricky and a vile traitor sometimes. Still, it didn't evolve as much as not to be tricked by a cell phone camera. So the hallucination you are having, if it's just a mere creation of the mind, will not appear either in the video or in a picture. The flies were there, way too many for a house that had its windows closed for the past few weeks. There was a family there before. I don't think this was normal, even for a country house. It wasn't even summer. The weather didn't look inviting for flies, and my house was not a warm place for them to live happily in. I opened the 4 curtains individually to reveal the flies blackening each window. I sprayed them and saw them fall one by one. I vacuumed the remains and moved to the bathroom for a relaxing bath. Relaxing was something that I wouldn't do for a while. I opened the faucet, and the bubbling sound of dry pipes came first, letting a little string of water fall that looked horribly yellow. By the time my bathtub was full, all I had was pea-colored water that smelled like sulfur, and it made me lose the last drop of hope I had that morning. I walked downstairs to the basement. I had been in a basement twice in my life, and one of those times was when I had to check the new house with the realtor a few weeks before moving. I wouldn't say I liked basements. The swamp smell, the spiders, the spider webs that were abandoned, meaning the spiders are now somewhere else where we can't see them. The mice, their horrible smell, and the furnace, the root of significant nightmares that come from old stories and many, many horror movies that I wish I hadn't seen. I took a gun with me. I know I shouldn't have had one, but my dad, who didn't know better, advised me to take his gun since being alone in a house can be challenging for a woman. My nearest neighbor was 2 miles away, but so was a police station, so I thought it was an okay idea. This time, I had to use it. It was loaded and ready to shoot some cans outside, in case my days turned more boring. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard noises coming from the water well. Something was struggling to get out. The well was a little bit deep, but still, anyone my size could have gotten out of there. I thought, well, great. Now I will have to shut a wild animal, because there is no way I will let an upset possum or rabid raccoon roam my basement. I cautiously approached the water well. The noise grew louder and more frantic. My heart pounded in my chest as I gripped my gun tightly, ready to defend myself. With each step closer, the sounds became clearer, and I could hear muffled cries for help. I peered into the darkness, straining my eyes to make sense of shapes. And then, as if emerging from my nightmares, there she was, tied, her clothes torn and covered in filth, her hair tangled, wounded on every inch of her body, her mouth shut, her hands firmly fastened. Her teary eyes called for help, but all I could do was just shoot. I pressed the trigger 1 time, 2, and even 3 times, with my eyes shut and my teeth grinding as hard as I could, as she lay there, motionless and calm. I took my phone out of my pocket and did what I should have done before shooting. I took a picture and put myself in the frame, too. The dead body in the background, the dirty well, and me hoping none of it was real. Hoping I wasn't real. I took a picture, and there we were. The flash blinded my eyes, and I saw myself, a newborn killer, staring at the screen. She was still there. Oh, so still. Oh, there were too many flies for an empty house, and without wanting it, I finished someone else's dirty job. Blood rain. It wasn't the red aliens that were the problem. It was the voodoo high priests that caused all the mischief. Monkey hands, parrot beaks, and baboon skulls were one thing. But when the blood rains came, all of the usual cons kicked into high gear. The mantis-like, spindly red alien surveyed my vegetables with an air of fascination. He stopped on the okra, holding up a stalk and studying it. He was dressed in ripped whitewashed jeans and a Blink 182 t-shirt. But behind his disguise was a standard silver spandex jumpsuit, like they all wore when they came into town to creep around. Whatever else you could say about the red aliens, they were creepers by nature, with no sense of boundaries. I just wanted him to move along. I clenched a final notice of foreclosure auction in my hand, as if taking out my anger on the paper would save the family ranch. Yahya Gaban took the deed to our ranch in foreclosure. Yahya was a cattle herder, but before that, he had been a TAF general and still had pull with the government. Yahya was hard, implacable, unyielding, a real monster. Yahya once shot and killed a 6-year-old boy playing in his grazing pastures while the child begged for his life. The laws allowed one to protect their land from intruders. When asked why he'd done it, Yahya had said, "The signs on the perimeter say, 'Stay out, trespassers shot on sight.' Wouldn't mean nothing if I didn't follow through." The Police Nacional who had questioned him said, "Yahya, the kid was illiterate. Guess he should have paid more attention in school." Yahya had said. The way Yahya looked at it was, when he set his eye on what's yours, it was his if he could find a way to take it from you. Uncle Kofi was missing an eye from turning the other cheek in a fight as a boy. But the rock in the other kid's hand had landed just right and shot the eyeball clean out. Uncle Kofi was a pacifist who wouldn't even swat a mosquito. So this was no contest. I had told Uncle Kofi we should just give up the ranch. We couldn't afford it. But Uncle Kofi was superstitious. He believed that fate could be wooed. A few weeks earlier, I had gone with Uncle Kofi to the Ako Desawa fetish market and met with Guédenon Benoit, the voodoo man. We entered his office, as he called it, which was a hut with a square-framed doorway lined with human skulls that looked like a no-frills mine shaft leading into a catacomb. The standing air inside was stiff, musky, and moist. The walls of the inner chamber were filled with the dried heads of dogs, monkeys, birds, snakes, and every imaginable living thing you could think of. You could almost hear the animal sounds echo from the clay walls. Uncle Kofi gasped at the abundance of spirits filling this hovel. I did not share his sense of wonder. I joked to myself, internally, that this was the great roadkill emporium of Lomé. "Here it is," Guédenon said, his rounded jowl stubbled with patches of white, and his bald head shining from the torchlight. The basket was filled with little dried chameleons, with their helmet-shaped heads adorned with horns and bony lumps, like modern-day dinosaurs. It smelled like furry jerky, dried in the humid, tropical breeze. Yes, here we are. After putting a handful of chameleons in a basket, Guédenon gathered a handful of dried parrots, each withered down to the size of a famished mouse. "Now, to change your luck, you will grind up the chameleon and grind up the parrot." Guédenon depicted the grinding while he spoke, taking up a pewter bowl and mallet to make the demonstration, the torchlight reflecting off his bald forehead. "You will mix this with soap and bathe yourself in it. Do this 2 times a day. 3 days, not a day more, not a day less." Uncle Kofi tapped Guédenon on the shoulder while he looked for some other nonsense to sell us. "Did you hear about the Dulaba? You mean about the strangers whose minds could not be read? They were talking about these totems at the village gates by our farm that look like men sitting cross-legged, with arms extruded, and heads of black tar, with seashells for eyes. The guardians, or Dulaba, are supposed to be able to scan the minds of foreigners entering the village to discern if they have ill intent. I heard that the Westerners, the lanky ones, who appeared before the blood rains, I heard that none of the priests could discern their purpose from the Duleba," Uncle Coffee said. "It is true," Guédanon told him. I wanted to scream. "They are red aliens, you moron." No one knows what they want. But I couldn't say anything, or I'd be committed. I was the only one who could see them ever since I was a child. I had been hiking on Mont Agu, exploring its ridges, when I saw a light in the mist and stumbled upon their cliffside observatory. Normally, it was cloaked, but something about the vapors in the mist had screwed with the effect, did something to the light. When I walked into what looked like a temple from the outside, I saw a screen wrapping around the length of the chamber in a semicircle. Large, spindly red, mantis-like creatures with 4 legs on their hind parts were engrossed in the readings and images on their screens, tapping away with long, bony fingers on the consoles in front of them. One of them turned its hooded eyes and triangular face in my direction and screamed, the pincers on the sides of its mouth flaring in fright. A group of them rushed toward me. I shielded my face, but they were not violent. That was when they gave me the scarab beetle amulet that allowed me to recognize them despite their cloaking tech, and explained to me about the bright blue marble we inhabit. They said, "It is not that Earth is special. There are plenty of habitable worlds with natural wonders. It is the size of the moon that counts. Our mission is to scan the cosmos to find other worlds that can host life. Other worlds with just the right size of moon." I had pressed the aliens as to why this was the case, and they had elaborated and explained everything in great detail, but I couldn't understand much of it. The only worlds that host life are those worlds with a moon that is just the right size to create a total solar eclipse, one of the red aliens said. And once that sacred syzygy goes out of balance, or is disrupted, life moves on. I had asked why they didn't just place moons around any planets with the right characteristics. He said, "There is a directive against playing God. Each civilization rises and falls on its own merits. When the time comes, a people either mature and venture out from their home or are snuffed out." It sounded dramatic back then, but these days, I don't know that a fair judge would deem us worthy of salvation, least of all us Togolese, who were forever finding reasons to kill and brutalize one another. The red aliens come from a sad, timeless dimension, much like Togo. On their world, there are tiny microbes in the soil that cover everything in shades of red. The microbes are in the air, the soil, the water, and can lay dormant for centuries, which is what is causing the blood rains. So much of this stuff is filtered out of the observatory that when they are here, they are literally pumping red dye into the clouds, day in and day out. In Togo, the next calamity is always waiting right around the corner, and word travels fast in Lomé. To stir people into a panic only takes the smallest of rumors. Strange lights flashing around Mont Agu. Tall, spindly men in strange clothing loitering in the market. Match that up with omens like blood rain and a lunar eclipse, and the entire populace was stewing with anxiety and murmuring up a storm. Especially Uncle Coffee. It was great for the priests. But you know what terror and intrigue is bad for? Selling vegetables and fattening cows, and for all of the divination and soothsaying about how the bloodshed of decades gone by would be punished unless the land was purified. How those cries reaching to heaven would compel the Almighty to blot out the sun. Despite all of that, all this voodoo accomplished was to tear into old wounds and inspire fresh political violence. Everyone in the suburban villages and the slums blamed someone for their troubles and sought protection or aid from the priests. The radicals blamed the Union Party and the rich Kabylie tribe for subjugating the masses and censoring speech. For this and for that, and prayed for their downfall. The Union Party blamed the radicals for deceiving the public with lies and doubled down on censorship. And the disputes were much the same in the suburbs. Each side thought the other evil. Each side saw the issue as one-sided. Good versus evil. In a way, each side was right, and each side was wrong. And our people, splintered in 1,000 factions, with no unifying principle, pointed fingers at each other, much the same as our governors did, and old feuds spilled out into bloodshed. And Yahya had sent a man to tell Uncle Kofi he'd be coming to the ranch the next day, and it was time we cleared out. I gripped the crumpled notice in a tight fist and looked up at the stranger. The red alien at my vegetable stall in the Lomé Grand Market grabbed one of my best okra plants and gave it a once-over, not knowing I could see through his disguise. "How much for one of these?" he asked in French. "Why are you here?" "I am looking for vegetables to thicken a stew." "Cut the shit," I said. "We've been having blood rain for the past 2 months. The red alien laughed heartily. "It's just from dust kicked up into the atmosphere from a dust storm. For 2 months? Dust doesn't take 2 months to settle. Maybe it is some kind of algae. like a red tide. It stained all my white clothes. It burned the leaves off the trees. People are using it to tattoo skin. What do you think it is? I know what it is. Red alien bugs. What else? His buggy eyes bulged, and his forehead furrowed. Then he settled into realization. You're her. You're Dora Igwe. Dora the Explorer. The one who found us in the flesh. Do you want to come watch the eclipse with us? Why would I do that? It is an important celestial event. No disrespect. But it gets dark once a day. It's called night. I really don't get the novelty. You wouldn't, would you? I guess it's like the suddenness of the enveloping darkness. It is metaphorical. Sometimes, you know, it is later than you think. What's that supposed to mean? You know, your people believe that war and bloodshed are like a virus, that it infects even the sun and the moon. And when the sun and moon get to quarreling, that brings about the eclipse, a final warning to change your ways. Those are just Batamaliba folk stories. They say the first mothers, Puka Puka and Kuyekok, told the villagers that the darkening of the sun was a warning to make amends for old feuds and live in peace, and the light will return. You are a spacefaring team of scientific explorers. You know this is an astrological, mathematical event. It has nothing to do with violence. Don't be so sure, child. There is much you do not understand. As the red alien turned and walked up the long, dusty road to the forest switchbacks, he turned and said, "Come watch with us, if you want." In the observatory, we waited for the eclipse. The red aliens were frantic. The one from earlier, who I'd nicknamed Tommy, took the controls and lifted the ship to a hover. "We've got to find a better vantage point," he said, as the ship floated through the Tongolese countryside outside Lomé. I could feel the eerie shadow chasing us down. The sky was full of fast-moving clouds, and a low mist hung to the valley floor, slinking down the mountain slopes and resting on the fields. The ship came to rest in Yahia's grazing lands, and the moon obstructed the sun. The red aliens gasped with a sound like the whistling of the wind. Like I said, though, I'm not superstitious. The whole thing seemed a bit overblown to me, but there it was, the total eclipse. A black orb with the faintest halo of red, set against a black, overcast, and moonless sky. Tommy turned to another red alien, who I'd known for years, and had nicknamed Freddy, and said, "The satellite has started moving too close. It is only a matter of time now." "Isn't everything?" Freddy asked. "Hey, what is he talking about?" I asked. "Don't you worry, child," Freddy said. "When the time has come, it will all happen very quickly. She doesn't know we are here for the moon," Tommy blurted out. "It is just the right size for the colony in HD 1106-7, Freddy said. Freddy made a gesture to shush him. But it was too late. I had heard it. So, for all our worries about our earthly disputes, this was what the end of the world looked like. At least I wouldn't end up being homeless. That had been the thought I'd been obsessing over for days. I went to look out the back window, and it was just like Freddie had said. It was coming quickly. Yahya was in the cab, rolling the excavator toward the ship, and the dipper and bucket were swinging down and about to crash through the ceiling. The sound was deafening. Shards of metal and other materials rained down. Wires and diodes and mechanical pieces pelted our heads and the ground. The red aliens shrieked. Tommy was holding Freddie like a kid in a theater caught with an unexpected jump scare. I ran out in the fields, under the dark, moonless sky. Yahya raised the bucket over and over, caving in the roof of the ship and tearing huge chunks of the fuselage out into his fields. Yahya was smoking a Cuban cigar, and I could hear him yelling, "Serves you right. Trespassers." I guess a similar thing would happen soon to our ranch house, in the family for 5 generations. Maybe the barn, too. That seemed to be the way of things, to tear down the old to make way for the new. Especially here in Togo. Tommy made it out of the ship, only to be met by the blast of a shotgun. "Got one," Yahya shouted. I just watched, frozen. The blast tore Tommy's torso nearly in half, felling him. The blood poured and oozed out onto the dark fields. The pool of blood was red, just like ours. I guess, however different we are on the outside, maybe all living things bleed red. We are a thirsty bunch, the living hungering after that red nectar, to stir it, to shed it, to pool it, and collect it. Then Yahya turned to me and pointed the shotgun at my face. "Run," he said. "Get off my land." And I ran, through the pitch-dark fields, in the cool of the eclipse, crying as I waited for a gunshot that never came. Yahya yelled after me, "Enjoy your home while you can. I'll be coming for it." And he laughed, a bellowing stomach laugh, an eerie, chortling, bone-chilling laugh, inevitable, unquenchable, soulless. And as I ran, tripping on rocks, legs cut by tall grasses, I saw sirens in the night. At least 12 SUVs. The Gendarmerie Nationales, the National Guard. They were coming for Yahya, alerted by the gunshots and the carnage. A tall, friendly Fed with a pock-marked face jumped out of one of the vehicles and tried to grab me. "It's okay now. We've got this," he said. But I wrestled away from him. As I made it to the clearing and the dirt road, I dared a glance back at the haloed specter of the eclipse. I hoped Uncle Kofi would be back at the kitchen table, waiting for me with some vegetable soup, blissfully impervious to the warring entities ravaging our lands. The blood rains fell in a torrent, coating the dirt road in a river of blood. I guess not all monsters are created equal. Ours take life without reason or remorse, just because they can. A sliver of light emerged from the fading eclipse as I reached the drive to the ranch house, lighting my path, warming the shadows. Uncle Coffee was at the door, the smell of the fetish soap on his skin. "Our luck is changing," he said. "Jingles." I moved the knife quickly, slicing with apt purpose. The bell of the cat's collar fell to the floor. Jingle, jingle. This was the third time I've done this since we first got this cat. I just can't stand the jingling of the collar, and I wanted it to look like the cat had somehow clawed it off, or had rubbed it against something outside, causing it to scrape off. Hopefully, my family will stop insisting that the cat have a bell on her collar after realizing she's just going to keep losing it. Nothing against the cat, of course. Each time I cut that bell off of her collar, she just looks up at me curiously, possibly even thankfully, as if she too can't stand the sound of its jingling. Though I'm certain that the cat and I hate the sound of small jingling bells for two very different reasons. My wife, our 3 kids, and I recently moved to my old hometown. I was eager to leave this place as soon as I turned 18, and I couldn't explain to my wife why I didn't want to move back. The same reason why I can't explain to her why I hate the sound of jingling. I was just a kid. One summer here, when I was 12, my friends and I were hanging out on Main Street. "I want strawberry," the little kid exclaimed. They were probably 6 or 7, and they bounced excitedly up and down with a shining grin from one ear to the other, their hands raised up, one clenched around a handful of change. They were smiling adoringly up at the clown, who was dancing in front of an ice cream truck. Turning to the little boy with a smirk and a wink, the clown sang, "For $1, 1 strawberry. I've prepared it for you, especially." The clown was tall and slender. The makeup around his face was white with dark pink triangles around his mouth as well as his eyes, which were both wide and kind. He wore a large sky blue drape over a striped unitard with different shades of gold and purple with bright red accents. He wore a thick belt around his waist. At points around this belt, as well, from threads of the blue drape hung small, brass and shiny bells, which rang a chorus of jingling with every movement, and sang a nameless tune whenever he danced. And how this clown loved to dance. "Mr. Jingles! Mr. Jingles!" another kid cried. "Can I have an ice cream sandwich?" The clown, Mr. Jingles, widened his eyes as he looked down at her. He took a deep breath as his smile grew and said, "You're the first today to say my name. This one is for free." He gave her a free ice cream sandwich and did another dance as his feet kicked out, revealing 2 more jingling bells, each one attached to the tip of each of his curled shoes. he did little magic tricks with his hands, and all the children around him laughed and cheered. Some even tried mimicking his dance around him. My friends and I sat on our bikes at a distance, watching the laughable spectacle. "I betcha he diddles kids," Richie said with a snort. "Nah," Brady retorted. "My mom says he's retarded. He probably doesn't even know what to do with his junk." We all laughed at that. I scoffed, saying, "Whatever his problem is, he's fucking creepy. Ain't that the truth?" Levi said. "I can't be the only one who wants to do something about this guy." Each one of us turned to look at Levi. We didn't really have a leader, but if there was ever a title holder for lead troublemaker, it was Levi. We knew he had something brewing in his mind ever since he first saw Mr. Jingles, and I was eager to stick it to that clown. "What you thinkin'?" I asked, a mischievously wide smile growing on my face. "Simple," Levi said coldly. "We fuck with the clown until he leaves, and we make sure he stays gone. I had the simple job of distracting the clown." I thought this was the dumbest role placement in the history of pranks, seeing as I was never much of an actor. So when I walked up to Mr. Jingles, I just did what first came to my mind and started asking questions. "Hey, clown, what flavors you got?" Mr. Jingles whirled in my direction. The quickness of that sudden movement and my proximity to him, I realized I was much more scared of this clown than I had initially thought I ever could be. "Little kiddo," Mr. Jingles exclaimed, "I've got flavors to match the rainbow." He kicked a leg out in a small dance maneuver. "I've got sweets to make your hair grow." He laughed. "I've got strawberry and chocolate, and long as you've got your wallet, I've got vanilla and mint, with a flashy green tint. There's pistachio and Neapolitan, but try not to get it on your chin." He laughed and chuckled, and that innocent sound within it made me start to think that maybe he didn't deserve to get ran out of town. I couldn't explain it, but he soothed me. All the fear and enmity I felt towards the clown seemed so unjustified now. But it was too late. Richie and Brady started banging against the hood of the ice cream truck while making guttural monkey noises. Mr. Jingles turned, his wide smile melting away in a thin line of confusion. He walked over to my friends, saying, "Heyo, kiddos, how about, and was cut off when the truck's engine started. The clown's head turned, and his mouth opened to a wide O of shock as he looked through the windshield. Levi was in the driver's seat and had turned on the truck. He started to run and shouted, "Oh no, kiddo, Mr. Jingles doesn't think," and was interrupted again when Richie pushed the clown over Brady, who was knelt behind him. The two ran away laughing. I was about to run too, and that's when I realized that Levi had more planned for what was meant to be a spread-out string of pranks on Mr. Jingles. As the clown gasped on the pavement, Levi revved the engine and then put the car in drive. He dove out of the side of the truck and sprinted down the block, faster than I'd ever seen him run before. I turned back, just in time to watch as Mr. Jingles's ice cream truck ran over his midsection. This caused the vehicle to swerve, forcing the rear tires to crush the clown's face. The body of the clown convulsed and spazzed, a monstrous ringing of disturbed jingling from the bells overlaid the tones of crushing bones, and a sound like that of a tossed watermelon. I was motionless and numb in indescribable horror as the vehicle rolled softly away, and I looked at the smeared remains of what used to be a human face. Blood gushed spastically out of a gaping maw that was once the mouth of Mr. Jingles, and more of it oozed out of his ears and coagulated in the ruffled tangles of his dyed pink hair. I stepped back, slowly at first, then turned and ran in the same direction as my friends. We were never named for that crime, though I knew my dad had his suspicions that we had something to do with it. It wouldn't be for a few years later that I wished we had come clean. After all, it was just supposed to be a prank. I don't think Richie and Brady thought Levi would do something like that, and I certainly didn't. I think I was just scared of what Levi would do if he ever found out I ratted him out. So I stayed silent. Now that I'm back here, all these years later, I stood outside our house in the dead of night with my cat and her recently defaced collar at my feet. And I wondered if the mysterious death of Mr. Jingles is still talked about, and if anyone ever thought of any leads. I wondered why it was so difficult to get in touch with Richie or Brady or their families. Maybe I would try to get in touch with Levi, but part of me doesn't want to see the man he grew up to be. A thick fog was creeping down the street. I watched as it grew, frothing up my driveway. I began to wonder if the reason why I couldn't get a hold of my friends was more simple and yet more outlandish than anything more feasible than moving away. The fog had reached my feet, and the cat meowed frightfully, and with a hiss ran somewhere behind the house. But here I stood, watching the wall of unnaturally decisive fog move towards and envelop me. I stood here, waiting for what I knew I had been due for some time. I know it wouldn't matter if I tried to run from it or not, because I'm here in this town, and the consequences of my part in a joke gone wrong are here to greet me. Through the thick fog, I can hear the distorted sound of an ice cream truck's song approaching, and through the fainted beat can be made out the cacophonous ringing, as if some pair of jingling bells attached to two slippered feet Jingle, jingle, a belly full of apples. Well, explain to me what it was doing on the tree if I wasn't meant to eat it. I had a long, hard day, Adam. If you remember correctly, you were supposed to name all the animals with tails, while I handled the green ones. The next thing I know, you're passed out by the water circle, taking yet another one of your naps. That left me to come up with all those names, and by the time I was done, I was famished. The apple tree is the closest to the water hole, and that's why I picked an apple. It was convenient. I wasn't deliberately trying to disobey the Lord. After an exhausting day, I simply wanted whichever fruit I could get to first. Can you explain to me why God put the forbidden fruit so close to us and made it so red to draw our attention to it, and made it so tasty? Adam, if you could try an apple, you would never be the same. I cannot describe its delectability. You may as well try one now. We've already been cast out. It's not as though he's going to cast us out again. If you ask me, it's unbelievably rude of him to have us name every living creature on earth, put all the acceptable fruit out of reach, and then kick us out of the garden once all the tedious tasks are completed. He didn't even say thank you. Not even a card expressing his thanks. I realize cards haven't been invented yet. But if he can create an entire universe in a few days, I think he can figure out a way to show gratitude. Don't you? Oh, stop crying, Adam. This place isn't so bad. Sure, it isn't paradise, but there are some plants with needles sticking out of them, and some lovely dust, and a lot of very interesting rocks. That one looks sharp. Be sure to never pick it up and drop it on anybody's head. Please cover yourself up. I don't know why, but for some reason, I can't stand the sight of you in all your nakedness. Shame. What's that? No, you know I don't listen when he talks. It's so loud and condescending. Do this, do that. Name this, worship me. Stop rolling your eyes at me, Eve, or I'll turn you back into a rib. It's all so boring. If any of it were all that vital to know, he'd write it down on a piece of stone. I suggested that to him once, and he pretended it was a bad recommendation. But secretly, I think he filed it away to use at a later date. The first time I see a rock with a rule on it, I'm going to look up at the sky and say, "Wow, who gave you that idea?" See if I don't. I'm not afraid of him, you know. You might be, but I'm not. I've barely had time to contemplate my own existence, so the threat of having my existence nullified is of no concern to me. Clearly, he doesn't want to get rid of us and start from scratch, or he would have done it already. No, he wants to teach us a lesson. He wants us to wander aimlessly for the remainder of our lives, cloaked in this thing called shame. I shall not. I refuse. I have nothing to be ashamed of, and I will not pretend that I do. A man makes a silly rule, and if the rule is broken, that does not make it any less silly. I don't care what sort of man it is. I don't care if you say God is not simply a man. He sounds like a man. And because he can sound any way he likes, that means he wants to sound like a man. We call him he, don't we? Then he is a man with made-up rules for living that I was never going to obey. I don't care if he hears me. Let him hear me. I am meant to spend the rest of my days surrounded by needle plants and you, a man with one rib. I am meant to wear rags because not wearing them makes me feel strange. I am meant to have children, I suppose, based on how disagreeable I am and how stupid you are. I can't imagine they'll be very endearing children. Once those children are here, I have no idea who they'll have children with, because it'll just be us. I guess that means once we die and our children die, that'll be the end of this nonsensical little experiment. Oh, but at least we named the giraffes first. A question for you, Adam. Since he isn't responding to us, why are we the only ones who can't eat the apples? I specifically saw a loud bird eating an apple the other day. Why weren't all the loud birds cast out of the garden? If a giraffe eats an apple, will it be thrown out of the garden? Why were we the only ones prohibited? Right, the knowledge. We're not meant to know anything. We're just meant to assign names, be fruitful, multiply, and praise him every chance we get. If we want knowledge, then it's out we go. Well, Adam, I choose to know. I choose to know things. Not just some things, but everything. Why create an entire world and then tell me I'm not allowed to know anything about it? I can't help but feel this was all some kind of test, and I will not be tested. Had I known that he was testing me, I would have eaten every apple on that tree. I would have stared up at him with the seeds falling out of my mouth, and I would have laughed. For if I am to go into exile, I am not going with an empty stomach. I will go with a belly full of apples. My only regret is that I stopped at one. I will not feel badly about you being punished for something I did either, because I have been punished many times over for you, for your laziness, for your superiority complex, for the way you smell at night when you are pressed up against me. It reeks so that I can barely sleep. Yet I have said nothing, because I have accepted that we are joined forever. You make strange noises in your sleep, but he never punished you for that. I took one bite, and we are damned. Be angry if you like, Adam, but do not expect me to worry myself over your anger. Your anger is your business. I will not make it mine. Last night, before he woke us with our punishment, I had a dream. I had a dream that all of this was submerged in water. Enough water to cover even the tops of the tallest trees. There were more people, lots more. They were running and screaming. Some were already drowned. In the distance, I could see a large boat, but it was too far away. I would never reach it in time. I would die alongside all these strangers. Instead, I lay myself down. I began to float, right up to the surface. I could still hear the wailing and the pleading all around me, but I was not making a sound. I simply laid like that on the surface of the water and let it take me wherever it wanted to go.